The snow wasn't falling anymore. It had fallen all night and all morning, blanketing the slope so thick that sound itself seemed to vanish. The trees were drowned in white. The cabin sat hunched and low against the hillside, its chimney cold, its door shut like a mouth that had seen too much. He saw her from a distance, just a lump at first, something strange near the frozen stream, too round to be a stump, too still to be alive. But when he came closer, the shape unfurled, human, small, kneeling in the snow with her face turned toward the wind, eyes shut, lips blue. She wore no coat, just a curtain pulled tight around her shoulders, the kind of curtain you nail to a wall and never take down. He didn't speak, just picked her up with both arms and felt how light she was. Her feet dangled, one shoe missing. There was blood on her heel. Her hair stuck to her face like wet straw. He didn't ask who she was. Not then. Back at the cabin, he laid her on the cot by the stove. The fire was low. He stoked it higher. When she stirred, she curled toward the wall and pressed her hand against it, like she was checking to make sure it was still there. That night, she didn't speak, just lay there breathing, shallow and steady, like a bird caught in a jar. He made her broth. She drank it without looking up. When he went outside to fetch water, he heard a sound, sharp, metal against wood. When he stepped back in, she had the knife, his knife, and she was sawing at something near the wall. It was the curtain, the one over the cabin's only window. He didn't move, didn't say a word. She cut through the last bit of cloth and let it fall. The light that came in was gray and soft, like morning through smoke. She didn't look at it, just picked up the curtain in both hands and sat down on the floor, holding it to her chest. When he finally asked, "Why'd you do that?" her voice came out thin and dry. "I hate nailed curtains." That night, she didn't sleep. She stood beside the window and traced its edge with her fingers. Her eyes kept flicking up, then away, like she was afraid of what she might see, or afraid that looking might mean something more than just looking. He sat in his chair by the fire and waited. She whispered, barely audible, "Please don't make me cover it again." She told him, in little pieces, like a puzzle whose corners had been burned, about the room. The room with the wallpaper that peeled like skin, the window that had been boarded from the outside, the man who said light was a sin. "You don't need to tell me more," he said. But she did, quietly. "I used to sit there all day. I forgot what sky looked like. Sometimes I'd close my eyes and try to remember how blue felt, but it all turned gray." She looked at him for the first time. "Is it blue out there?" He nodded once. "Sometimes." "What color is it now?" "Same as your eyes." She turned away. "No, it's not. My eyes forgot." That night, after she finally fell asleep, he took the curtain she'd cut down and hung it over the fire, watched it burn slow. Then he stood at the window and looked out. It was still gray, but in the morning it might be blue, and maybe then she'd remember she wouldn't go outside. He didn't press her, just left the door open when he went to split wood or check the traps, let the scent of pine and coal drift in, let the breeze touch the corners of the room. But she stayed inside, always sitting where the light touched the floor, like a prisoner testing the warmth of the world through cracks. Sometimes when he caught her watching the birds at the feeder, he'd move slow, open the window just a bit, and let the air stir her hair. She never flinched, but she didn't move closer either. The days passed that way. She learned where he kept the matches, how to feed the stove, which floorboards creaked. She didn't talk much, but she listened, and he never forced silence to end. He let it rest between them like snow on a branch, heavy, but not permanent. One afternoon, he was mending the porch rail when she came to the threshold. Not outside, not quite. Her toes stopped at the edge. Her eyes squinted in the sun. He stood up slowly. She didn't speak. Instead, she lifted one hand and pointed toward the trees. Not at anything in particular, just toward. He nodded. "That's east." She looked down. "East." He waited. Then she asked, very quietly, "If I keep walking that way, how far till there's no more forest?" He rubbed his beard. "Few days, maybe 4. Then it opens up, grasslands, big sky. She held her breath like she wanted to believe it. Do you want to go see it? He asked. She didn't answer. Just stepped back inside, leaving the question hanging in the air like smoke. That night, the wind came hard, rattled the shutters, whined through the rafters. She sat by the fire wrapped in a quilt, her eyes wide and alert. Storm? She asked. He nodded. Windstorm. Nothing more. She looked around the cabin, then said, The house I came from, it didn't have wind. How come? No windows, not one. Just air vents. Doors with locks on both sides. She paused. Sky was something you heard about, like oceans or cities, but you never saw it. Not really. She turned to him, her voice sharper now. Do you know what it's like to grow up not knowing what your own face looks like? He didn't respond. There weren't mirrors either, she said. Said they were sinful. Said vanity was the first crack in the soul. Her voice dropped. But the women, they kept bits of broken glass hidden under the floorboards. Just slivers. They'd trade them like money. A chance to see half an eye. A cheekbone. Enough to feel like you weren't disappearing. He stirred the fire but didn't speak. She looked at him. I don't want to disappear. He met her gaze. You won't. That night, after she fell asleep, he took down the old tin mirror from above the wash basin, scratched, fogged, barely reflective, and left it beside her bed. In the morning, it was gone. But when he looked at the table, she'd carved something into the wood. One word. Sky? Would you like me to continue with part 3? The rope in the rafters? The sound of rope was one she knew in her bones. She'd heard it in the early hours of cold mornings, when discipline was done before dawn. She'd heard it when they dragged someone from the prayer room to the healing barn. She'd heard it when the bells rang and the children had to line up with their heads down. But she hadn't expected to hear it here. It was just a creak at first, faint, but rhythmic. In the rafters above her bed, she froze, waited. Creak, creak. She rose slow and looked up, and there it was, a loop of old rope, hidden in the beams above, swaying slightly as if stirred by memory. She couldn't look away from it, her breath shallow, her hands cold. The mountain man was outside, chopping kindling. She climbed the ladder to the loft. Her hands touched the beam. The rope wasn't knotted, not the way she feared, but it had been, once. The imprint still pressed into the fibers, a shadow of purpose. She stared at it a long time. Then, without a word, she climbed back down, found his hunting knife where he kept it by the stove, and climbed back up. She cut the rope. Not with rage, not with fear, with finality. It dropped in a coil to the floor below. When he came inside and saw it, he looked up, then down, then at her. She was standing with her hands still on the blade. I didn't put it there, he said. I know. I didn't know it was there. She nodded. But I did. He didn't ask questions. He gathered the rope, took it outside, and burned it in the fire pit. She sat on the porch steps while he did it, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes distant. When he came back, he sat beside her. Quiet. The wind had calmed. The mountain, too. After a while, she said, The man who used to run that place. He said we were born tied. Said obedience was our only way to heaven. Said if we cut the rope, we'd fall straight to hell. He didn't look at her when he answered. Maybe some ropes were never meant to hold anything. Maybe they were just waiting to be burned. She didn't reply, but she leaned against his shoulder for the first time, and somewhere in the loft above, the absence of the rope felt like a window had been opened. She stood at the edge of the woods, the trees thinning behind her, the vast openness ahead. They'd been walking for hours, her on foot, him beside her with the horse in tow, not speaking much, not needing to. Each step was a sentence, each silence a story. Now, at the edge of it all, she stopped. Is this it? She asked. He nodded. That's the start of the plains. Just past that ridge, you'll see the whole thing. She looked down at her feet, dirt and pine needles. Then up at the ridge, grass waving in the wind. Nothing blocking the sky. I don't know if I can. You don't have to, he said. We can turn back. She shook her head. Number, I want to. I don't know what happens when I finally see it. He didn't answer right away. Then, maybe nothing happens. Maybe everything does. She took a deep breath, climbed the ridge. At the top, the world opened. Endless fields, a sky so big it felt alive, blue stretching in every direction, like it had been waiting just for her. She stared. Then something cracked. She didn't cry like a broken thing. Not loud, not messy, just slow tears down her face like rain on stone. Her body stayed still, only her breath shook. Behind her, the mountain man stayed where he was. She turned after a while, walked back to him, and for the first time, she smiled. It was small, barely there, but real. You were right, she said. About what? Everything. That night, they made camp at the base of the ridge. No tent, just stars above, and firelight between them. She lay on her back, watching the sky like it might speak. He handed her his canteen. She drank. Will it always feel this strange? She asked. What? Being free. He thought for a moment, then said, only until it feels normal. She nodded, then laughed quietly. What is it? He asked. When I was little, I used to dream of flying, she said. But in the dreams, I was always locked in a room, and I'd tell myself, if I ever get out, I'll never look down again. And now, she looked at him. I'm not afraid of the ground anymore. He didn't say anything. He just reached out, slow and gentle, and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. The fire cracked. The stars moved overhead, and she finally slept without walls, without locks, with the whole sky pouring in. They came upon it in the late afternoon, a crooked little cabin half-eaten by the woods, tucked where the ridge curled into the valley. The path to it was overgrown, the fence rotted, the chimney cracked clean through. He didn't slow when he saw it, but she did. She stood still in the path, eyes fixed on the door, one hinge gone, the other holding on like it didn't know how to let go. This place, she whispered. He turned. You know it? Number. But it knows me. He looked back at the cabin. It didn't look like much. An old settler's shelter, maybe. Abandoned for years. But the silence around it wasn't right. It wasn't quiet. It was listening. You want to keep moving? He asked. No, she said. I think I need to go in. He didn't question her. The porch creaked as she stepped up. Dust curled in the sunlight through a crack in the roof. Inside, the cabin smelled like mold, bark, and something faintly sweet, like dried lavender left too long in a drawer. She stepped through the door. The floor groaned, and her breath caught. Not from fear, from familiarity. There was a shelf on the wall with old jars. One still had the ghost of preserves inside. A rug, faded to ash colors. A child's rocking chair in the corner, its arms missing, its seat split. She knelt beside it. I used to dream about this place, she said. I thought it was just something my mind made up, but it's real. He stayed in the doorway. She touched the armrest. In the dreams, I was always alone, but there was a voice, a woman's, not cruel, just tired. She would hum something slow, like a lullaby, but broken. He stepped inside. There were no pictures on the walls, no names scratched in the wood, but there was a feeling, a presence. Someone lived here, she said, a woman and a child. They were hiding. He nodded. From what? She stood. Same thing I ran from. She crossed the room, opened a small door to a root cellar. The air that came up was colder than it should have been. She lit a match from his pack and descended the stairs. Dirt floor, stone walls, a broken stool, and scrawled into the wall, so faint you'd miss it without light, were 4 words. We tried to leave. The match burned low. She didn't scream. She just whispered, they didn't make it. He stepped down behind her. His shadow joined hers on the wall. We're still here, he said. She looked at him, and nodded. She wasn't alone anymore. That night, they didn't camp. They stayed in the cabin. She swept the floor, fixed what she could. He patched the roof with tarp and branches. They lit a fire in the hearth, and in the silence that followed, she found herself humming. Not the broken lullaby. Something new. Software whole. The next morning, fog filled the valley like a tide. The cabin creaked around them, but held. She woke on the floor beside the hearth, a blanket draped over her, the coals still warm. The man had been up before dawn. She could hear him outside, chopping wood slow and steady, like a heartbeat. She walked out barefoot, her breath white in the morning air. He looked up, gave a small nod. "I had a dream," she said. He didn't ask about it, just waited. She walked past him, toward the path that curved behind the cabin, one she hadn't noticed yesterday. It sloped gently upward through pine and fog until it reached a clearing. And at the center of the clearing stood a wooden bell tower, old, slanted. Its crossbeam still held a bell, rusted and blackened, its clapper missing. She stared up at it. This was part of a mission, she said, more to herself than to him. A place for the lost. They took women here. Girls. The man stepped up beside her. She touched the frame. They told them they were being saved, but there was no saving. She pointed at the bell. It never rang. Not once. Not to warn. Not to call for help. He ran his hand over the weathered beam. Why leave it standing? She shrugged. Maybe they thought no one would come this far. Maybe they thought no one would remember. She turned to him. But I do. He studied her. What do you want to do? Her hands balled into fists. I want it to ring. Just once. He looked up at the bell, judged the distance, then went to the trees, cut a long limb, shaved it down smooth. When he returned, he climbed the tower in silence. At the top, he wedged the branch through the metal frame, and when he struck the old iron, it didn't make a clear sound. It groaned. It shuddered. It echoed like something ancient remembering how to speak. The forest fell quiet. Birds stopped. Wind paused. And somewhere in her chest, something unlatched. She dropped to her knees, not in pain, in release. He climbed down. She wiped her face. That was the sound I needed. Later they sat in the clearing, sharing bread and tea from a tin. She asked, "Why did you help me?" He stared at the trees for a long time, then said, "Someone helped me once, when I couldn't speak." She nodded. There was no need to say more. That night, back in the cabin, she found a piece of charcoal and wrote on the inside of the cellar door, "We made it out." She looked at him. He smiled. "You ready to leave?" he asked. "Soon," she said, "but not yet." She wasn't afraid of the road anymore, but tonight the fire was warm. The roof didn't leak, and for the first time in her life, she was allowed to sleep through the night.